Hey everyone, I hope you're well. This is the story about what if Naruto was a silent prodigy and joined Akatsuki. Before we start, please subscribe to the channel and like the video as well. So without any further ado, let's start the what if. The candle flame flickered, creating moving shadows on the wall of the underground hideout. Lord Orochimaru, our job is done. You have indeed chosen a worthy candidate. Kabuto bowed before a pale man with long hair and purple eyeliner. Sasuke Uchiha. His sole purpose in life is to defeat his brother Itachi Uchiha. But at his level, he would never accomplish that. Orochimaru shifted and placed his head on his hand. He will surely come to me. For power. For revenge. Kabuto remained bowed and hesitated. Lord Orochimaru, if I may, that Naruto kid. Orochimaru's eyes narrowed. The blonde boy? Kabuto swallowed, sensing some curiosity. Yes. He has really sharp senses. He was the only one who did not trust me till the very end. He made it sure that I knew. Also, despite all his foolish actions, he made sure that I couldn't collect any information on him. I just have a bad feeling about him. Orochimaru smiled a little and replied, he'll make a fine opponent for our dear Sasuke. As a large and unexpected number of teams had managed to pass the Forest of Death, Enko had decided to eliminate some teams. It had been very boring according to Naruto. Sasuke went first and his fight was with Zaku, the dude whose arm Sasuke had broken, and it still was broken. Despite his broken arms, Zaku had decided to fight Sasuke and had been utterly defeated. With his curse mark sealed by Kakashi-sensei, Sasuke was apparently safe to continue. When it was Naruto's turn, he had to fight Kiba. Kiba came at him grinning, ready to go wolf fang at him, but just before he could do so, Naruto in the blink of an eye landed a solid punch on Kiba's stomach. A very surprised Kiba flew into the wall and an angry Akamaru attacked Naruto, who grabbed him by the neck. It was a weak spot for both Kiba and Akamaru. Give up, Kiba. He tightened his hold around Akamaru, which caused him to squeal and squirm. I give up. Kiba surrendered and ran forward to snatch Akamaru back. He glared at Naruto. How dare you, you piece of shit. Naruto turned and walked off, holding up a hand. I wasn't planning on actually killing him. He stopped and turned around to face an angry Kiba. He grinned, unless. So they got a month to train for the final thing. Naruto walked around in the woods, far from the village. A snap of a twig. Naruto turned around, simultaneously crouching, and threw a kunai at the place where he heard that sound. He relaxed when he saw a man with red hair. Kido came out. He had a scratch on his face and blood oozed out, but Kido seemed unfazed. He grinned, displaying his rather sharp canines, and held up a hand in greeting. Hey Kit. A scroll dropped from up and Naruto caught it. Hitomi jumped down and smiled. Good, your senses have improved. Naruto rolled his eyes and opened the scroll. Information on Kabuto. Great. He grinned. I knew he had something to do with Orochimaru, that goddamn snake. Probably checking up on his precious Uchiha. Kido said in a sing-song voice, batting his eyelashes and radiating love. Ignoring him, Naruto turned to Hitomi. What about Gaara? Hitomi twirled a kunai around her finger and then let it slip, and it landed right at Kido's feet, but he didn't even flinch and continued imitating a lovelorn Orochimaru running after Sasuke-senpai. He'll probably act in your favor. She replied. What? He hates his village. He's been called a monster too. In fact, he still is. He's treated just like a demon. Just like you. A shadow fell over Naruto's face and Kido stopped his drama. If you make an ally out of him. I don't need allies. Naruto said in a small voice. I don't need anyone, he shouted, glaring at the girl. He stepped forward and aggressively held her. Kido took a defensive stance, but did not dare say anything. I told him that I will kill him. And I will. don't be the monster they think you are," Hitomi said softly. Naruto let go of her and stepped back. He then sat down and held his face in his hands. Kido and Hitomi shared a worried look. Kido stepped forward and crouched before the blonde. "Orochimaru will probably attack the village." This got the blonde's attention. "Use Gaara to defeat him. There's no need to dirty your hands. One of the tricks of assassination, refrain from dirtying your hands if possible." Naruto stared at him and he asked how he knew. "What? Assassination tricks?" "No, about Orochimaru." Hitomi flicked her hair. "Remember our members near the Sand village? They discovered the dead body of the Kazekage in a canyon a few days ago. Also, one fox was able to sneak into his hideout, and the information he got tells that Orochimaru actually uses other people's skeins as a disguise." Naruto stood up. "So you mean that right now, Orochimaru is posing as the Kazekage? And they don't even realize it? How dumb can they be?" Kido shrugged and reminded Naruto that Orochimaru was one of the candidates for the position of the fourth Hokage. Naruto nodded, but then suddenly a thought struck him. "Why the hell do I care? And why is this any of my business?" he said, startling his companions. A cool breeze blew raining down small leaves. "Naruto," Hitomi began, but Kido cut her off. "Look, Kit. You want revenge on Konoha, right?" Naruto nodded. "Do you want that snake and Sasuke to destroy this village? Do you want them to take revenge for you? Where's the satisfaction in that? Do you actually just want to sit back and enjoy destruction by someone else? Are you going to let them take this right from you?" "Ha!" The blonde was dumbstruck. Nothing had ever made more sense. Protect Konoha to destroy it. Kido smiled, making Naruto laugh. "Yes. Perfect. Protect Konoha to destroy it." A month passed. Sasuke had been whisked away by Kakashi-sensei and was probably learning some secret jutsus or something. Pretty unfair. Naruto was back in the village and the taunts. He couldn't pass through one street without hearing at least 100 curses thrown at him. As always, he ignored them and walked on. He never trained. At least, not during the day. It somehow gave off a weird vibe to the other genins. Is Naruto even training? Choji asked Ino as he bit a chip. Ino shook her head as said, "I've never seen him doing anything apart from roam around lazily. Maybe beating Kiba got to him and he thinks he's the best and no one can beat him." Choji shrugged. Ino took a chip from him and nodded, "Even Shikamaru's training." Guess this idiot beat him in laziness." Naruto's actual training occurred at night. That amazing time of the whole day when absolutely no one was awake. That time when everyone was so vulnerable. Kido and Hitomi trained with him. Nothing special, just the usual. Kido would slash at him with several hundred different types of katanas and stances and styles, and Hitomi would sneak in and attack him. He did learn a few sealing-type jutsus. In case you need to tame someone, Kido had said. With a bit of practice, Naruto could maybe, be able to do something like the Reaper Seal. Nah, it was still some large-level shit. Hitomi actually took Naruto's katana and brought it back the next day fully sharpened. It was like his sword got a makeover. He slid his finger across the blade as light as he could and yet it cut deep. "Damn," was all he could say. "Aren't you going to tell anyone about the probable attack that might occur on Konoha?" Hitomi asked him 2 weeks before the exam. Naruto stopped and thought. "Nah. All I need is you all. All your fox forces. We're not the fox force. All your foxes on alert and around the village. In human form, of course. We won't need anyone else." Hitomi hesitated. "Listen, we can't do that." Naruto turned around. "Why?" "Alright, first, Do you really think the Hokage won't notice if 100 random skilled people suddenly appear on the day of the final exam? Second, not all foxes are capable of transforming to human. Third, our comrades are spread all around the world and so many can't make it here in time. Naruto sighed and massaged his forehead. What about you guys? Are there more elite, capable of ninjutsu and human-look foxes put there? Can they make it at least? Kido nodded and told him to leave it to him. A few days later, Naruto lay in his bed, talking to Kurama in the sewage mindscape. Of course, I plan on using Gaara somehow, he told Kurama, who sat on the other side of the cage in his human form. He held his head in his hand and listened. Another Jinchuriki, huh? Doesn't look like he has a good relationship with Shikaku. Who? Shikaku, the one-tail. Oh yeah. Kit, what do you plan on doing? At the exam? After everything. I'll just get stronger, and then one day, destroy this whole damn place. You do have rather powerful opponents, you know. Naruto nodded and thought about Sasuke. With that curse mark. The day of the final exam drew closer and finally it was here. Naruto received a lot of glared AMD insults and bad luck while he ran the stadium, but he couldn't care less. He ran up to stadium and suddenly a thought struck him. It had been too long without him creating any trouble or doing something dumb and Naruto-ish. And so, he made it a point to trip and fall down as soon as he entered the stadium. This was accompanied by some laughter and some boos. Naruto got up, dusted his pants, and joined the other Konoha genins and waved to the crowd. Of course most of them didn't respond, but a few made it a point to swear at him, to which again he paid no attention. The people from other villages noticed the hatred being thrown towards Naruto and soon a murmur passed through them. This was ruining the Hidden Leaf village's reputation. Soon jonins were seen walking up to angry Konoha villagers and telling them to shut up. After a opening ceremony thingy, where Sasuke's absence was noticed by the vast majority of the audience, the genins were told to get up to the waiting room. So Sasuke basically is still in the competition as long as he appears before his fight? Naruto asked no one in particular, but Shikamaru decided to reply by nodding. Even though Naruto had a vague feeling that Shikamaru also hated him, a part of him also believed that Shikamaru was just too damn lazy to hate him. That's awesome. I get to beat his ass. Naruto exclaimed energetically as he punched his fist into his palm. Typical Naruto, Shino said quietly behind them. Naruto heaved a sigh of relief at that. As much as he hated this stupid act, he was glad he was able to keep it up. He remembered the fact that Orochimaru was currently posing as the Kazekage, and looked up at the person next to the Hokage. Why the hell do the Sand villagers wear those dumb masks? It's just too convenient for anyone to disguise themselves. He wasn't able to sense any particular chakra that resembled Orochimaru as well, and it pissed him off. Stupid evil Sannin with stupid chakra concealing jutsus. Shikamaru noticed a suddenly pissed Naruto muttering to himself and asked him what he was mumbling about. Just thinking of ways to defeat Sasuke. Shikamaru nodded. Lord Hokage and Lord Kazekage. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Chunin Finals. Finally, it had begun. Finally, it had begun. Naruto's Great Escape. And right off the bat the commentator announced, and the first match is between Neji Hyuga and Naruto Uzumaki. The crowd cheered and then the murmuring started. They were now placing bets. Naruto's sharp ears caught a few conversations. Neji Hyuga will win for sure. That blonde doesn't stand a chance. This is gonna be interesting. What if that Naruto does win? I'ma bet on him. This is going to be interesting. Neji Hyuga belongs to the Hyuga clan, right? Naruto was quite surprised to hear a few people from other villages placing a bet on him. He grinned. Let's beat him to pulp. He entered the arena and waved at the crowd, which sort of cheered. It was hard to make out the different things. The commentator told them to start, but none of them made the first move. They circled each other slowly, staring into each other's eyes. Naruto noted Niji's stance. It was similar to Hinata's, but definitely more precise and perfect. He remembered how Niji had almost killed Hinata with a palm to her heart and made a mental note to maintain distance from him. And then, he spoke. "Surrender already, Uzumaki." Naruto raised his brows. "You know you can't win. Just surrender before I'm forced to fatally injure you." Naruto couldn't contain his smile now. He stopped circling and grinned. "Try me," he said. Niji narrowed his eyes and took his stance. 8 trigrams 36 palms. With that, he noted Naruto was in his range and began his attacks. He ran towards him and attacked in a flurry. Naruto was unable to avoid it. It was too fast and too accurate. With every touch a chakra point extinguished and Naruto fell down. Niji stood over him and smirked. "This is your destiny. You cannot escape it." "What's my destiny?" Niji whirled around and saw Naruto casually leaning under a tree. What? He then realized that the Naruto he had just defeated was actually a clone. He cursed as Naruto laughed and scared at him. "You were so caught up in your stance that you didn't even notice my clone. So much for your Byakugan." Niji scowled at the blonde who grinned at him. This is not what he had heard from Rock Lee and the Genins. This was supposed to be the failure of their batch. But Niji couldn't help but notice that he had more chakra than most and it flowed much more smoothly and efficiently than others. He had amazing control over his chakra. He saw Naruto remove a scroll and place it on the ground. Just like Tenten, he summoned a katana from the scroll. "My chance!" he called out and rushed at Niji. He ran up to the Hyuga and then jumped up in the air, twisting his body and releasing a powerful wind jutsu. The crowd was shocked. But the Genins in the waiting room were even more shocked. Since when had Naruto been able to do wind jutsus? Where did he get that katana from? "Did you know about this?" Shino asked Shikamaru, who shook his head. The Son siblings were quite surprised. "He uses wind jutsus." Kankuro pointed. "I know." Temari replied. "It's on your level, but he does it with a katana." He said again. "I know." Temari said, frowning. They had not expected this. She glanced at Gaara, who was grim a few moments ago, but now she saw the ghost of a smile on his face. Niji would have been gone for sure if it wasn't for Tenten. He thanked her mentally and evaded it by using 8 trigrams palm rotation. When he stopped, he saw a very pleased Naruto. "You're really good at this, huh?" Niji scowled in response. "What did you say about my destiny?" Naruto asked in a cold voice. "You can't escape it. You will always be an outcast." Naruto ran at his and slashed at him. Niji dodged and used gentle fist at him and struck a point below his stomach. But Naruto kept slashing. It wasn't as accurate as Tenten's attacks, so Niji was able to dodge it and he was able to strike several other chakra points as well. Then Naruto jumped back. He muttered something and Niji's Byakugan widened. It was as if a different chakra was flowing through the blonde now. All his deactivated chakra points burned back to life. This wasn't normal chakra. Niji took a step back in precaution. Naruto jumped up and created a dome of Naruto's using Shadow Clone Jutsu. That attack again. Niji thought and got ready to use his rotation. All the Narutos slashed their katanas in midair, launching a powerful slash of air. Niji used his rotation to deflect those attacks, but even through it, he could feel the power and intensity of it. He stopped it to be met with a powerful punch from the blonde. "What?" he began, but without a word Naruto skillfully gripped the Hyuga's wrist and slowly crushed them. He wouldn't break it, of course, just stalling time. He looked into the wide Byakugans and whispered. "This is my destiny." He headbutted the Hyuga and as he fell down gave him a perfect roundhouse kick that he had learnt from Kido. The crowd gasped as Niji was sent flying. Naruto didn't bother going to help him and instead went and picked up his katana. His precious sword. It gleamed under the sun. Naruto smiled and returned it to its scroll and then turned to face Niji. He wasn't interested in associating with this arrogant elite bastard. He was just like Sasuke, but Naruto couldn't resist it. He walked up to the Hyuga, who was slowly getting up. The crowd waited to see if he could actually continue the fight. Naruto held out a hand which Niji glared at. "You make your own destiny," Naruto simply told him, enjoying the look on the Hyuga's face. "And the winner is Naruto Uzumaki." "Who would have guessed?" the commentator announced. Niji had taken his hand and Naruto had helped him up. Niji smiled and accepted his defeat. If such a failure could beat a genius like him just by believing that he could make his own destiny, why couldn't he? The crowd roared as Naruto waved at them. He caught sight of the shocked faces in the stands. He had some explanation to do. Time to come up with lies. Naruto climbed up the stairs slowly and let out a long sigh. How was he going to explain everything? Just then he heard footsteps approaching and he turned on his heels and headed to the nearest room. He was about to open the door when he heard Shikamaru say, "Hey Naruto." Naruto cursed under his breath. He then cast a quick glance at the door which read Rock Lee and turned to face Shikamaru. Why did it have to be the Nara? Deal with it. What are you? Shikamaru began, but was cut off by the blonde who smiled sheepishly and grabbed the doorknob. You see, Rock Lee here told me to give my best and to win, and so, I just wanted to check up on him, you know. With that lame excuse, which made Naruto cringe deeply, he pushed open the door and was about to call out the bowl cut's name when he noted the situation. Shikamaru stood there frozen as well. It was Gaara. He stared at them with a slightly clenched hand in the air, sand covering Rock Lee. What are you doing here? Naruto managed out. In that brief moment of awkward silence, Naruto had decided that he would have to deal with this situation with a bit of dumb Naruto. He couldn't be the Naruto he had been with Gaara that day in the tower. Shikamaru here was definitely a keener observer than this redhead. He would rather let Gaara be suspicious of his dumb behavior than let Shikamaru see him threatening Gaara. What's going on? Naruto spoke. Why are you here? Gaara retorted. He's our friend. Shikamaru countered. They stood there for a moment and then the sand started swirling faster and clung to Rock Lee. Hey, Naruto began, but Gaara cut him off. I'm here to kill him. He's alive only because his sensei saved him. I need to finish him. Shikamaru took a step forward but Gaara glared at him as a warning. You can't just kill people. Naruto said, cringing mentally. Oh really, Naruto? Gaara scowled and then lowered his hand. The sand slowly dissipated. But Gaara wasn't going to leave just like that. You have no idea. You're all just living here happily with no idea what goes on in the world. You don't have to run for your life. You don't have to worry about people out there who would love to kill you. None of you are hated by everyone. You'll never understand how it feels to be treated like some monster. Gaara spat. Every word rang true in Naruto's mind. For every sentence Naruto wanted to say, I know, but of course he didn't. Don't mind me, the redhead brushed past them, scowling, I'm just trying to survive out here. With that he slammed the door shut. Naruto could feel Shikamaru low-key shaking. After a few seconds they moved to check whether Lee was alright. Then they left the room without another word. Shikamaru had to prepare for his fight and Naruto needed to have a little chat with Gaara. Naruto found the redhead on the stairs heading towards the waiting area, and he called out to him. Gaara stopped and glanced back. Do you think you're special? Naruto spat. He couldn't control himself. He had wanted to be cool about this, but all the pent-up feelings were too overwhelming. Gaara raised a brow, but Naruto continued, You think you're the only Jinchuriki? Ha! Do you think you're so scary? That people are so damn afraid of only You think you have some tragic backstory? Well, sorry, but that failed to impress me. You said that we'd never understand. Naruto took a step forward and poked a finger at the redhead's chest, hard. Guess what, loser, I've been through the same shit. Gaara's eyes widened, and a part of Naruto was surprised that Gaara actually thought himself to be a damsel in distress or something. There are other Jinchurikis out there, probably living a worse life than ours, so stop acting like you're the victim out here. He snarled. With that, before the redhead could reply, Naruto turned on his toes and started walking away. He could hear the commentator's voice booming, announcing the next pairings. Oh, and the blonde turned back in one turn and stared into Gaara's green eyes. I'm not killing you. This was what surprised him the most. Why? Was all he said. Naruto smirked and replied, I need ya. He didn't bother explaining, nor did Gaara ask. Good. Naruto walked up the stairs into the viewing room, only to discover that Shikamaru's match had ended. It had been with Temari, Gaara's teammate, and the similarity in their chakra told him that she was also possibly his sister or some close relative. Shikamaru looked beaten up and Temari was furious, but also full of wonder. Damn, the Nara might have come up with new tricks. He walked up and saw Shikamaru shaking his head, but also happy. Damn, he said, walking into the room, I didn't want to fight a girl. Naruto slapped his back and asked, why? Do you think they're weak? He grinned. Shikamaru laughed and told him that it was just a drag. She was really good though. Shino added, a wind user like you, Naruto. Shikamaru turned to Naruto and said, yeah, thanks to your fight earlier, I was able to come up with a strategy against her fan. Naruto grinned even though he wasn't sure how exactly. The next match was supposed to be Gaara's and Sasuke, but since Mr. Uchiha had decided to vanish along with Kakashi-sensei, the Jonins decided to give him time until the last match. The commentator announced the match against Shino and Kankuro, but the Sand Genin forfeited. Naruto frowned. They announced another pair of someone against those sound ninjas, but even they forfeited. Eventually, it came down to Gaara versus Sasuke. The crowd was now murmuring, and Sasuke was nowhere to be seen. Kurama? I am not sending my foxes to look for your dear Uchiha. TCH. The Hokage stood up. We will give Sasuke Uchiha 10 minutes to appear, otherwise the winner will be Gaara. With that he sat down and started talking to the Kazekage aka Orochimaru. Naruto went forward and gripped the railings. He closed his eyes and focused on the Hokage and Orochimaru. It wasn't clear, but he could pick up traces of their conversation. Sorry about, Jonin. Awaited this match, Uchiha, best Genin. That was enough for Naruto to know that Orochimaru was telling the old man how much he had wanted to see this match and how disappointing it was. The crowd was restless now. The time was almost up, and it was then that Sasuke and Kakashi-sensei decided to make their appearance. They appeared in a flurry of leaves. Kakashi-sensei apologized to everyone, sorry we're late, I hope he hasn't been disqualified. The Jonin referee shook his head at him and told them that they were barely on time. Sasuke looked different and weird. He was wearing a black training gear and his hair had grown longer. He looked wild and ready to fight. Gaara stepped down with a grin on his face. Naruto crossed his arms. This match was something he had long awaited. What was stronger? The power of a Jinchuriki or the power of hate? The match had barely started when Sasuke decided to jump back as far as the wall. Gaara simply grinned at him. Naruto watched closely, trying to predict what exactly Sasuke had planned. From his expression, Sasuke seemed to be really confident with whatever he had in mind. Naruto stole glances at the Kages sitting up there, watching the match with interest, but the Kazekage, Orochimaru, showed no signs of any sudden movement. If he was here for Sasuke, then he probably wanted to test him out. Gaara raised a hand and a sand fist rose from the ground. Sasuke braced himself, and as soon as the first started punching the ground he had been on, he jumped out. He stepped on the fist once and pushed himself towards Gaara. He startled for a second when the sand that made up the fist reached out and tried to grab his leg. He twisted free and landed on the wall, using chakra to get his feet to stick to the wall. Gaara's posture didn't waver. He simply spread his arms a bit wider, splitting the sand in two. The two fists grabbed at Sasuke, who ran across the wall evading them. He pushed off the wall, behind Gaara, and tried to hit him with the Phoenix Flower Jutsu, but just before it could reach the redhead, a wall of sand blocked it. Gaara turned around to face him. "You can't break through my sand." Sasuke simply pressed his lips tightly as if to say, "We'll see about that." Sasuke once again ran for refuge towards the walls, but the sand was faster. Before he could leap on the wall, the sand formed a wave and blocked him, but the Uchiha seemed to be expecting it, as he kicked off towards the opposite side in a swift movement. The sand followed him again. Gaara raised his hands in concentration, glaring at the raven. He's planning an attack, he's trying to build up speed. Naruto turned towards the muttering Nara. Shikamaru turned towards him and raised his brows, and Naruto simply smiled at him. He looked back towards the field. Sasuke was running in sharp turns and zigzags, trying to outmaneuver the sand. And it was working. Naruto saw Gaara grow frustrated as he simply let go of the sand in a trusted hull. "Stop running like a coward. Give me your blood." Again with the blood. He wasn't making a good impression, was he? Naruto glanced at the enraptured crowd, who muttered over how smart they had been to bet on Sasuke and how Gaara still had a chance to win. Useless. As the sand fell, Sasuke once again ran up to the wall, and crouched this time. He put out his left arm and placed his right hand over it. Naruto knew he was building chakra. Is that Chidori? Now that's biased. Damn that Kakashi. Meanwhile, Gaara called the sand towards him and built a dome around himself. Naruto could faintly see the sand also crawling up and covering Gaara. His ultimate defense, Tendrils of sand shot out at Sasuke, but they were too slow. The steep wall provided for a great ramp for him to run across and build up speed. Naruto saw his Sharingan awaken. Was he not using it before? Gaara tried blocking his path with the sand whips, but Sasuke simply cut through them. Naruto could see that Sasuke was having some trouble maintaining it. He could do it as easily and smoothly as Kakashi. Sasuke cut through the tendrils, but not unscathed. His body was riddled with scar, and Naruto could feel the crowd tensing up, for surely this was the great climax they'd been waiting for. This was what they'd get their money on. The Chidori cut through. It actually managed to pass through the sand. The crowd didn't exactly go wild because they still didn't know whether his attack had actually harmed the desert genin. The minutes passed and even Naruto felt himself anticipating the outcome. He decided to eavesdrop Gaara's teammate, his siblings. His attack can't cut through. The girl, Temari said. Gaara's ultimate defense can't any broken that easily. The boy, Kankuro agreed. Wow, they're really overconfident. Naruto thought. Are you sure, Kit? Naruto faltered. For Kurama to suggest that a normal shinobi could overpower a bijou. Unexpectedly though, only one thought arose from Naruto's core, bearing with rage. Sasuke will never be stronger than me. He can't. His thoughts were broken by an anguished howl that arose from the dome. Gaara! He got him all right. The sand slowly fell and Naruto's head whipped towards the sand siblings, who had misleaded him. They looked equally shocked and simply stood there shaking their heads. Sasuke's hand had managed to pierce through Gaara's left side, somewhere below the ribs. Gaara howled again and Sasuke tried to pull away, but the sand grabbed him. Is he going to win the battle but lose the war? Gaara held at the wound and stared at his blood. It was as if he had never seen himself injured. How dare you? Mother wants your blood. Gaara screamed. God, he's crazy. Absolutely crazy. Thank the gods. For what? That I'm not like him. Ha! Naruto was surprised at the confused questioning tone of Kurama, but he dismissed that as a tease. Gaara screamed some bullshit about some mother wanting Sasuke's blood and whatnot and felt the chakra stir. He whipped his towards Orochimaru and sensed some definite chakra disturbance. It was well masked a while ago, but now the evil aura seemed to leak through him. He just couldn't control himself. Seeing his apparent protege overwhelm the Ichibi was no ordinary feat. But it seemed the crowd had something else coming at them. Of course, this wasn't the actual power of the Bijou. It was only a fraction of the true power. The sound tightened around Sasuke while Gaara continued shouting at him. Oh wait. Is that? Shit. Yeah. He's probably so crazed about the fact he got hurt that he's giving in to Shikaku. Who? Shikaku, that's his name. He always was the dumbass punk type. Naruto shook his head and prepared to intervene, but the San siblings beat him to it. They jumped down from their stands and in front of Gaara. The referee looked as confused as the audience when Gaara didn't stop. He stepped back and let his siblings handle him. Gaara, please, you can't do that right now. Temari pleaded. We'll take him. Kankuro said, and he and Temari started dragging him away. This small drama was enough to attract the attention of absolutely everyone, and Orochimaru didn't fail to seize it. A blast and then smoke. It arose from behind the stadium, near the woods. Naruto whirled around to see the Kages and saw Orochimaru standing up. Shit. How could he have been so stupid? The Kazekage stood up and signaled at something. Another blast shook the stadium. This time, it actually took place in the stadium. People scrambled for cover while Jonins reached out to defend the audience from the intruders. Naruto looked towards Sasuke, who simply stood in the middle of the field. Naruto left him to be and rushed towards the Kages. The old man seemed to be taking this calmly as hell. Damn it, you old man. You can't die by someone else's hand. Tsundere. I will deal with you later, you old ball of fur. I'll take that as a compliment. Shut up, tenant. He had managed to reach the side where the Kages were seated, and saw the two men face off against each other. He was almost there when suddenly four weird-ass ninjas jumped in from nowhere and within a few seconds, set up a purple barrier. What the actual? He noticed few Jonin standing just outside the barrier trying to break it with no avail and eventually settling for just sitting there waiting for a chance to attack. Naruto decided to leave them be and see to the other intruders. He wasn't going to let a cheap rogue ninja like Orochimaru interfere in his plans. San shinobis. Lots of them. Not the most skilled, but in enough numbers to cause a lot of problem. There was a whole section of the audience unconscious, no, asleep. Naruto spotted Shikamaru and decided to head over there. There he saw Kakashi and Might Guy fending off the San shinobis and protecting the citizens. Naruto went to Shikamaru and realized that he was awake. Hey, what are you doing? No response. Shikamaru. Why are you here? No response. Naruto headed to Kakashi. Before he could say anything, Kakashi turned to him and said, the San team has headed out. I don't know where or why, but I'm sure they're up to no good. Take Pakken and go. Collect some more Genins as well. He summoned Pakken, and Naruto nodded. He saw Sakura and Sasuke running towards him, and so he knelt and waited beside Shikamaru. Hey, he tried again. Shikamaru, wake up. No response. He sighed and sat there as Sakura came over followed by Sasuke. What happened to him? Sakura asked. Naruto was about to explain when Pakken went over and bit Shikamaru. He didn't respond for a few seconds, making Naruto think that he actually was unconscious, but just then he screamed and got up, shaking his hand wildly trying to get Pakken off. What the hell? He shouted at Pakken, who simply seemed pleased of himself. So you were awake? Sakura asked in disbelief. Shikamaru rubbed his head awkwardly, and replied, "They used some smoke bomb, and so I held my breath, but then later everyone fell asleep, so thought, why not? Anyways, all this fighting is too much of a drag." Naruto couldn't. Sakura stared at him. Sasuke was, well, he just stood there. "So, you decided to sleep, in the middle of an invasion?" Naruto said slowly. Shikamaru thought for a second and then nodded. Sakura blew out an exasperated breath. "Okay, that's okay. Right now, we have to go after the Son siblings." Naruto informed them. He told them what Kakashi said to him, and then with Pakken leading, they ran out towards the forest. "There!" Sasuke shouted. Shikamaru decided to split up and stay hidden, just in case. "I'll be watching from the shadows," he told them and headed towards the trees. They neared the three siblings, but just before they could attack, Temari turned around and slashed her fan, sending out a strong wind that pushed Team 7 back. "I'll handle them," Temari shouted to her brothers, who nodded and kept moving. "We don't have the time to waste on her." Naruto cursed in his breath. Shikamaru decided to jump out, and "I'll handle her." He grinned. Sakura was about to protest, but Naruto nodded and kept moving. Temari tried to stop them but found out that she couldn't move due to Shikamaru's jutsu. "I honestly hate fighting girls," Shikamaru told her. Team 7 moved forward and caught up with the brothers. Sasuke attacked them with his fireball jutsu, but Gaara's Sand blocked it. This time Kankuro decided to step up. "Go Gaara!" he shouted to the redhead, who didn't bother looking behind and continued moving. Kankuro unleashed his puppet, and the three managed to dodge it. The puppet wasn't the only trick up his sleeve though. Even as they dodged, the puppet shot out several small needles that managed to get them. It was pure instinct, but Naruto managed to select them all by surrounding himself with a cloak of chakra and exerting wind on them. He glanced at Sasuke, who had 3 needles on him, and he was removing them quickly. Meanwhile, Sakura had managed to get hit by only 1 needle, in her leg. She also quickly removed them and then got ready with a kunai. Sasuke stumbled on a branch, but caught himself. He fell back and gripped the branch, swing himself up again and kicked the puppet hard in the face. It cracked. Kankuro waved his hands around, weaving invisible threads that controlled the puppet. Despite being broken, the puppet didn't slow down. Those are some serious skills, Naruto thought. They needed to take down Kankuro to stop this barrage. He was trying to plan out how they would do this when suddenly a huge ball came out of nowhere and rammed into Kankuro. He fell down the tree and they realized that it was Choji. "How?" Sakura asked him. Choji gave them a big smile and said, "Well, I say y'all heading out, so I decided to follow. Leave this guy to me." With that, they headed out again in pursuit of Gaara. He had had a good head start, so he was pretty far away. This would take some time. Naruto wished he could summon a fast, speedy fox, but that was out of the question. They finally saw him. Gaara stopped. Sakura threw several shurikens at him, but each was precisely blocked by his sand. Sasuke tried to hit him with his Phoenix Flower Jutsu, but Gaara simply made a wall of sand. He turned around and glared at Sasuke. "You!" Then he seemed to notice Naruto, and his glare hardened. This was a bad time for Sakura to attack, as just when she jumped in screaming, Gaara slammed her into a tree with a sand hand, lol. It was strong move, and the sand stuck to the tree with an unconscious Sakura. "Leave him to me," Sasuke shouted. And he ran up to him. Naruto was planning to attack, but stopped short. Should I attack? He really wanted to. Gaara seemed like the perfect opponent. But Sasuke wanted to fight him too. A part of him wanted to rush in and fight together with Sasuke and against Gaara. This was the part he'd been listening to the most recently. The good part, it seemed. Meanwhile, the bad part, the angry and vengeful part, wanted to just sit there and watch the fight. He wanted to enjoy it. And Sasuke didn't want him to interfere. Who was he to deny a dying man his last wish? Sasuke's not gonna die. How do you know? After a lot of internal conflicts, Naruto dispersed the Rasengan he was collecting and slowly moved away. He didn't want to just sit down and watch the fight, so he went towards Sakura and tried to free her from the Sand. But of course, it was impossible. So he just stood there and watched, occasionally defending against some stray jutsu that went his way. He came up with different strategies but didn't say a word. Sasuke jumped around and attacked. His fire jutsus seemed to have no effect on Gaara, so finally, Sasuke decided to use Chidori. This will end now, Naruto thought. Are you sure? Sasuke launched at Gaara, but this time Gaara didn't fall for it. He slammed his hand against Sasuke and threw him. The person who looked up was not Gaara. It was some kind of monster. Let mother have your blood, he said in a crazed voice. Sasuke couldn't get up and without meaning to, Naruto jumped in. He couldn't control himself any longer. Sasuke stared at the blonde. He hadn't moved a muscle after Sasuke had told him to stay put of it in the heat of the moment. But he definitely felt that a little help would have been nice. Now he was thrown across by this Sand monster. And suddenly Naruto had charged. It hadn't seemed like he was planning to jump in anytime soon, nor did it seem like he was waiting for his chance. It was purely instinct. And Sasuke's wondered what type of training taught him such instincts. Naruto easily dodged Gaara's attacks, even those with which Sasuke was having trouble. Gaara was now half covered with some sort of Sand armor, except that it made him look like a monster. After sparring for a few moments, Naruto backflipped behind Gaara, and there was a momentary pause of confusion. Gaara seemed to have not registered that flip, and was standing still, and Naruto had landed right behind Gaara, crouching. A second passed, and just as Gaara realized that he was behind him, Naruto did something weird. He joined his hand and attacked Gaara's, but with 2 fingers. There was a weird, momentary pause of confusion. Gaara didn't seem to have registered that the blonde had backflipped behind him, and Naruto didn't flinch. Then, as if they both realized it at the same time, Gaara turned around in outrage and Naruto managed to dodge only barely. He landed on a branch and with a small smile activated the paper bomb that he had put on Gaara. Sasuke's head whipped around to Gaara just in time for the explosion. He shielded his eyes and opened them when the dust settled. He saw Gaara standing there, his Sand armor gone, and he was glaring furiously at Naruto, who seemed only mildly surprised. Oh, you're still standing? That's pretty great, considering the soft spot I had chosen, Naruto said, casually tilting his head, as if talking to a friend. You! I will kill you! Gaara screamed at Naruto, who didn't react. Gaara, now bleeding from several small cuts, began weaving some hand signs, and this seemed to alarm Naruto. His head jerked forward as if someone had just told him something crazy. Could it be the demon? Sasuke wondered, then shook his head. That was a stupid theory. The Dobe launched himself from the branch towards Gaara, but he was too late. Just before he could reach and strike the redhead, Gaara vanished in an explosion of smoke. Dust billowed around them, pushing back trees for several kilometers. Sasuke clung onto the tree and held onto Sakura for dear life. He heard a small distant screaming that was most probably Naruto's. He hoped he hadn't died or something. Ah yeah! A loud voice boomed. Sasuke coughed up the dust that he had inhaled and looked up as the dust settled. His eyes widened at the sight of a huge Sand monster which didn't resemble any animal in particular that Sasuke knew of, but it had a tail. Sasuke noted its sharp teeth and claws and weird patterns on his body. If he squinted and looked closely, he could see Gaara standing on top of it. With his activated Sharingan, he could see that Gaara was actually asleep or unconscious. Just then he noticed a small yellow blur flying towards the Sand monster, trying to attack it, but it was swatted away like a fly. Naruto! Sasuke thought, alarmed. But Naruto twisted in midair and landed on top of a tree without much difficulty. Then he began yelling at the sand monster. "Hey! Just because you're bigger than me doesn't mean you can do whatever you want, you know." The sand monster was taken aback. "What are you talking about, you lil punk?" Naruto replied furiously, "Who are you calling lil punk?" The sand monster brought down its sandy paw/hand/whatever on top of Naruto, and Sasuke almost yelled. But just before Naruto could get squashed, he performed his own summoning. He weaved a quick hand sign, bit his thumb and summoned, with another huge cloud of dust. Now, in place of Naruto stood a giant toad. Sasuke gaped at it. The toad was smoking. How? When had Naruto learned this? Sasuke didn't understand, and all he could think of was how badly he wanted his own summon animal. "The Ichibi," the toad exclaimed. "The Ichibi? The one tail? So that makes Gaara a Jinchuriki too?" Sasuke's mind was having trouble processing all this new information. Just then the toad jumped really high into the air and unsheathed his sword. "He has a sword?" Sasuke's mind was reeling, but his face didn't show any hint of it. The Uchiha had mastered the art of maintaining the poker face. Even though the toad's attack had been quick and severe, it didn't do much damage to the sand mons, the Ichibi. It only managed to cut off its arm, which the Ichibi regrew using the sand from the previous arm. The Ichibi didn't even seem to be mildly bothered by this, and its only reaction was, "Aw man." The Ichibi attacked and the toad dodged. They sparred for a while, destroying the forest around them. Then the toad and Naruto began planning something. Sasuke activated his Sharingan to try and read their lips. "Something with sharp claws." "Got it," Naruto said, nodding furiously. "Let's go." With that, the toad raced towards the Ichibi, weaved a hand sign, and suddenly vanished in another cloud of smoke. But what emerged from it wasn't a toad at all. It was a fox. A big, long, slender fox with bright orange fur and bloodshot red eyes. It slashed its long fingers and managed to land an attack on the Ichibi. The Ichibi recoiled, and now, the deep scratches from the fox's claws took more time to heal. Naruto tilted his head and sighed, "Just how tough is this guy?" The toad nodded and told him, "You need to wake up Gaara. He's being controlled by the Ichibi. He probably allowed him to do so when he summoned his, and now he's unconscious." The toad nodded once more, sending up a puff of smoke from his cigarette. "Why didn't you say that before? Anyways, just get close to the Ichibi, I'll wake Gaara up," Naruto said, determined. Just how was this idiot planning on waking Gaara up? Sasuke got his answer a few moments later when the toad raced towards the one tail. The toad slammed into the Ichibi and Naruto jumped on top of it. The sand gripped him, but he held Gaara tightly and shook him hard. When that didn't work and the sand began reaching his chest, he headbutted Gaara. Tanjiro style. And that definitely woke him up. The Ichibi screamed, "AWWWWMANNNNN. I hate you, Naruto Uzumaki," and then he disappeared the same way he had appeared, in a cloud of smoke. Sasuke watched as both, the blonde and the redhead, fell from the sky. The toad had also decided to leave now that its job was complete. Sasuke wanted to race out, to go and catch Naruto before he fell, but his broken ankle and damaged leg didn't allow him to do so. The last thing Sasuke noted before they fell into the trees was that Gaara was bleeding from his head and Naruto had blood on his head as well, but Sasuke doubted that it was his blood. "Ugh, Sasuke-kun." Sasuke whipped his head around. Luckily, along with the Ichibi, the sand had dissipated as well, freeing Sakura. And she finally woke up. "Sasuke-kun?" she asked again, expectantly. Sasuke quickly edged towards her and put out his leg. "Quick, heal me," he told her. She stared at him for a moment and Sasuke was going to groan if she started complaining. But surprisingly, she nodded and got to work. A few moments later Sasuke was back on his feet and he turned and ran towards where the two Jinchuriki had fallen, with Sakura at his heels. While running, Sasuke noticed two other figures heading towards the same direction. The fangirl and the puppet guy. Sasuke noted. They were probably heading towards their brother. They reached a small clearing and saw Gaara lying on his back staring at Naruto. Sasuke couldn't make out whether it was disgust or surprise on the redhead's face. Naruto, meanwhile, had crawled close to Gaara and was saying something to him. At that moment, Temari and Kankuro landed on either side of Gaara. Temari stepped forward and placed a hand on her battle fan, challenging anyone who dared oppose her. Meanwhile, Kankuro took Gaara by the arm and Sasuke slowly did the same for Naruto. Sakura followed his lead and held up Naruto, without asking any questions. In a silent agreement, both teams took their injured member and set off in opposite directions. One towards the village, which was now billowing smoke, and one away from it. Sasuke glanced back and heard Gaara mutter a "sorry" to his siblings, which seemed to surprise them. Then he looked at Naruto, but found him unconscious, or maybe even sleeping. Apart from the respect-why feeling that Sasuke was having towards the blonde, he also felt extreme jealousy and hatred. He didn't understand how Naruto was able to deal with the people Sasuke was supposed to deal with. He hated how Naruto always had to come Ito the rescue. Why couldn't he do anything? He knew Naruto was stronger than he let on, but what was this huge gap? He hated himself for feeling this way, but he had to defeat his brother. And for that he needed to be the strongest. For now he kept these feelings aside and pulled Naruto along towards the village, and things didn't look particularly good. Naruto woke up to brilliant sunlight straight in his eyes. With a small yelp he covered his eyes and reached out for whatever curtain there was and pulled it back. He lay there for a few moments and had almost drifted off to sleep once more, but the realization struck him. He sat up in bed, eyes wide. He looked around. He was back in the hospital. The same room, and the same window. The sunlight still cascaded down at him and it annoyed Naruto. He glared at the white translucent curtains and cursed at them. Futile. He then jumped off the bed and stood there, deciding how to proceed. He was in the hospital, meaning he had passed out. It was too sunny. This wasn't the weather when he was fighting Gaara. So it was probably the next day. Naruto felt uneasy at the prospect of having missed the entirety of the Sand village's attack on Konoha. But time can't be reversed, so he had to plan his next moves carefully. There was a sound from the door and Naruto scrambled onto the bed and pretended to sleep. He could sense Sasuke's chakra and slowly opened an eye, just a bit, to see Sasuke walking and sitting on his own bed. He didn't look as banged up as he did that day. He just had a few bandages around his head, neck and arms. He made no sound and Naruto followed suit, making the room being illuminated only by nature. This was the scene for a few minutes, with an unmoving Sasuke sitting on his bed, staring at the floor and Naruto staring at him with a half-open eye. The room's silent symphony was suddenly interrupted rudely by a rush of genins. "Oi!" Shikamaru greeted. "Sasuke-kun." "Naruto!" Sakura exclaimed after seeing Sasuke alive and well, and then somewhat forced herself to acknowledge the sleeping blonde. The other genins came as well and surrounded Sasuke. Naruto couldn't make out any useful information except trivial matters like whether he was feeling fine, did he want anything to eat, yada yada. Then, they were all ushered put by a nurse who was accompanied by Kakashi-sensei. The nurse seemed very aware of her proximity to Kakashi and Naruto could make out the red flush of her cheeks. Oh, for God's sake! After everyone departed except Sakura, Kakashi decided to wake up Naruto. He slowly did rise. And then even proceeded to tuck right back in, for extra effects, but was stopped by Kakashi. "You were unconscious for a day," Kakashi informed him, grabbing Naruto's attention. Well, he had guessed so. But judging from the tone of his voice, Naruto detected an urgent matter. Naruto frowned. What exactly could have gone wrong? Really? He asked his sensei, who nodded slowly. Was he trying to understand whether the matter could be disclosed to Naruto? So, What happened? Where did those Sand Shinobis go? How's the old man? He asked in that sick optimistic tone, as if nothing could away his brightness. Sasuke turned and stared at him, Sakura sighed, and Kakashi pinched his forehead, a long sigh escaping his mouth. Lord Hokage is dead. Kakashi finally said. For a while Naruto didn't register anything. Ha! Excuse me. He's dead. Today's the funeral. The anger which had been building up in him for the last couple of days overflowed once more. The shock made him unable to speak. What could he say? Good riddance? How? Why? Was there even an answer? The only thing Naruto knew for sure was that he wasn't able to take his revenge. At least, not on the old man. The person who decided to go along the civilian council and imposed several rules against him. The person who smiled at him and plotted behind his back. The man who told him that if anyone got hurt because of him, even if he was defending, then it could lead to a death sentence. Naruto grabbed the sheets in tightly balled fists, shaking with anger. He hated Orochimaru. He hated Orochimaru. He hated Orochimaru. He absolutely detested Orochimaru. Fortunately for him, his shaking and overall reaction had been taken as sadness. Kakashi placed a hand on his shoulder and looked at him with pity. I know it must be hard for you, Lord Hokage was like a grandfather to you, he said in a sad voice. Naruto almost scoffed at the last part, and he would have if not for the immense anger he was feeling. Why did that freaking snake have to get in his way? Where were Kurama's Fox Force? What did they do? What about the Konoha shinobis? How could the old man just die? He didn't respond to whatever Kakashi said next and simply shoved his hand away, asking to be left alone. Kakashi still looked at him sadly and then left with Sakura. Naruto noted how, for some reason there were a lot of stuff on Sasuke's table compared to his own. Great. Another reminder of how much he was worth. Another reminder of how he didn't matter. How useless his existence was. He saw Sasuke staring at him from the corner of his eye, and angrily pulled back the curtains. It wasn't very useful, as the curtains were quite translucent, but Sasuke got the message. Naruto seethed with anger for a few days. He had attended the funeral, but he left early. He didn't want to see people crying because that jerk died. He should have been the one to have killed him. He would have celebrated then. He glared at the nurses, who glared right back, and did not speak. He planned how exactly he would tear apart that snake. Bit by bit. He planned it down to the last detail. Kurama decided to randomly give him tips, increasing the intensity of the hypothetical torture. No. If you do that, he'll die. That's the point. He'll die faster. Do you want it to be that easy? So you're telling me that stabbing there is not a good idea? Basically. Kurama knew that Naruto's was angry. And he was angry with the Kuni as well, which is why he didn't speak much. He only said a few things here and there to make sure Naruto didn't stay yelling at him. Kurama was also aware that beating Orochimaru wasn't going to be as easy as Naruto thought. He thought of several ways that Naruto could try to defeat him, and his mind wandered to the Tekuhiko where the Jinchuriki and Biju could sort of like sync their chakras and attack. Kurama wasn't eager to try that out and it wasn't easy. So he stifled a yawn and continued to plan the torture session with Naruto. Sasuke had had enough of the white room and bland food, and of Naruto. This whole setup reminded of that time when they fell under a stupid genjutsu and Naruto started crying. Sasuke hated how he had been pathetic against Gaara and how Naruto didn't even have to try to defeat him. Sasuke hated this. He was supposed to be the best. He's supposed to be the prodigy. Then why was it that Naruto kept on revealing secret jutsus and tekwakiks? Why was he able to do things that Sasuke couldn't? Was it be wise he was a Jinchuriki? It did not help that Naruto hadn't spoken since he learned of Lord Hokage's death. Was he really that close to him? Grandfather? Was he receiving some special training under the Hokage? Is that why he was always slacking off at the academy? Because he was already trained in all that basic stuff? This made sense considering him being a Jinchuriki. Any nation would want to use a Jinchuriki as a weapon. Sasuke often glared at the curtain behind which Naruto laid. A few nights later, he just couldn't help it. He went out of the sickening white hospital room and out to the roof. He stood there, glaring at the sky. He was angry. At Naruto. At the Hokage. At his brother. And most of all, at himself. Because no matter how you looked at it, him being weak was his own fault. He almost didn't notice the soft footsteps behind him, and when he did, it was bit too late. 3 to 4 people jumped at him. He struggled against them, but to no avail. These guys were too strong, and Sasuke hadn't healed yet. What a pathetic excuse. He thought to himself. He soon stopped struggling and was dragged into a dark corner of the roof. He could make out vague features of the people who had captured him, but not much. He soon found himself tied up with something sticky, disgusting. He expected to be beaten up but was surprised when one of the people started speaking. "You're weak, Sasuke." Sasuke narrowed his eyes at the person who spoke, but was also mildly surprised at how disappointed they sounded. "I don't understand what Lord Orochimaru sees in you." Another one spoke up. Sasuke's head whipped in her direction and he snarled at him. He was replied to with a punch in the head. "Don't snarl at me, you loser." The person who punched him spoke. "Definitely a girl." The person who was speaking first spoke again, clearing their throat. Sasuke framed his neck, hoping to get a clear view, but the moon was at a bad angle. Maybe if they moved a bit behind. So yeah. Lord Orochimaru offers you a place. He can grant you with power. Sasuke stopped for a second. His glare loosened as he waited for the person to continue. "What do you mean? Also, what makes you think I would join you? And that snake?" The person sighed and he heard shuffling. He flinched back on instinct as he sensed another punch aimed at him. "Geez, what's up with girls nowadays?" Someone stopped the punch as it never came. He a lot of cursing and muttering but instead focused on the person in front of him. "Lord Orochimaru already gave you the curse mark, didn't he?" "Wait, that was him? That was Orochimaru? Did the others know? Wait, did they already tell him?" Sasuke was confused. "You should already be able to feel the power that he shared with you," the person said, most probably smiling. "We all have the curse mark. It's a blessing in disguise. If you wish to join, then meet us a week later at night at the forest's edge." With that they all stepped back together and into the moonlight, illuminating their features. Sasuke couldn't help but stare at them. They didn't look exceptional, but they gave off an aura of hostility. A guy suddenly reached forward and Sasuke thought he was going to attack him or something, but instead he just tore whatever was binding him. This was strange since Sasuke was sure it was like strong metal wires binding him, but this guy just tore it. They slowly stepped back and jumped out of the hospital in unison, leaving behind the Uchiha to contemplate his moves. Eventually he went back inside, but his mind was full of certain ideas. Naruto decided to let it go. Of course, not completely, but until he met him again he would have to play it. The hospital finally released him and Sasuke a few days ago. The day before being released Sasuke had challenged him to a fight, and before they could actually begin Kakashi had intercepted them, testing Naruto over the other side of the building, where he landed on a tree, and had a man-to-man talk with Sasuke about something. If he had to guess, Naruto would guess it had something to do with the curse mark, because when he came back he was pretty angry, more like annoyed, like a child who had been scolded by their parents to not touch a pot of boiling water. Naruto wandered aimlessly and rounded a corner, bumping into the Genins. They all looked up and actually acknowledged his presence. Huh, that's a first. Maybe second. Naruto held up a hand in greeting and joined them, smiling brightly at everyone. Inta continued with whatever she was saying, and then this lady with a huge chest and long blonde hair marched straight into the Hokage office. Shikamaru nodded, "Lady Tsunade." Sakura joined in, nodding her head vigorously, and launched off into a whole paragraph that she had learned about her. But Naruto didn't need her to explain. Lady Tsunade, one of the 3 legendary Sannin, world's best medical ninja. She changed the whole ninja system by introducing medical ninjutsu and incorporating it into every team, making it a crucial part of ninjutsu. What is she doing here? Maybe she was called here to heal someone. But then, who exactly is that severely injured? Rock Lee. The doctors had said that he had no chance of recovery, and his sensei would do anything for his student. Why? He blurted out, interrupting Sakura, which she did not appreciate. Oh, they say she might be the new Hokage. And also, she can cure Rock Lee. Kiba said, stroking Akamaru's fur, who glared at Naruto. Naruto nodded. He talked with them for a while and then wandered around the town. He heard whispers about Lady Tsunade. How she was famous for her medical ninjutsu and for her impressive chest. Naruto shook his head at these pathetic gossips. He needed something more. He soon spotted Jiraiya near a bar and interrupted his flirtation with a random lady. Hey, pervy sage. Jiraiya whipped his head. He frowned at him as if he had never seen him. His frown deepened when the ladies started walking away. He tried in vain to stop them, and was soon accompanying Naruto to the Hokage's office. So they asked me whether I would like to be the Hokage, and I was like, nah man, that's not my thing. So they started emotionally blackmailing me and asked me to get the other Sannin, Tsunade. And I told them that she would definitely not agree. But then, here we are. Jiraiya finished with a shrug. Naruto looked up at him and wondered how exactly he became a Sannin. Lady Tsunade was definitely scary. The first she did in front of Naruto was break through a goddamn wall. She then proceeded to ignore to him and he to do something really stupid to catch her attention. So, he called her grandma. 'Cause she had to be at least as old as Jiraiya, and she was definitely using some high level of medical ninjutsu to keep her young beauty intact. Big mistake. He would have been punched to heaven and back if it had not been for Jiraiya. He somehow calmed her down and then sent away Naruto, saying that he would only anger her further. He didn't want her to think of him as a spoilt brat, and so before leaving he had flashed her a huge smile and proclaimed that he would be the next Hokage. He did not miss the slight hitch in her breathing as he said that. He left them alone and decided not to poke his nose further into their business. There was a chance that Lady Tsunade would take up the position because even she knew that there was no one else as capable as her, or Jiraiya. Naruto was sitting on his rooftop wondering about all this when he saw Sakura run up to Sasuke on the top of another building. She seemed to be telling him something that he was clearly not interested in. Suddenly he felt someone's chakra behind him and he turned in a stance on instinct only to find Kakashi standing there with his novel. He took the blonde and Sushini to the rooftop where Sasuke and Sakura were. Naruto huffed out like child and asked Kakashi why they were all collected here. To train, of course. He replied with an eye smile. Sakura and Naruto groaned. Kakashi decided to take some light duels personally and Sasuke and Sakura went first. It was nothing impressive, and when it was his chance he didn't do anything impressive as well, just those normal kicks and punches. Despite being busy fighting, his sharp ears were able to pick out the conversation going on between Sakura and Sasuke. Sasuke-kun, I wanted to thank you. Sakura fiddled with her kunai pouch and smiled at him, while Sasuke raised his eyebrows in a questioning manner. You know, back then with Gaara. Sasuke shook his head. That was Naruto. He said simply, staring intently at the blonde. Naruto. Come on, no need to be so modest, Sasuke-kun. I know you were the one who actually fought him. Naruto probably only entered in between and got his ass kicked. She huffed out. Sasuke clenched his fists but said nothing. Naruto felt an awkward feeling come over him. Should he be mad at Sakura? Or should he be flattered at Sasuke's compliment? He decided to shrug it off and continued fighting Kakashi, unaware of the emotional turmoil that Sasuke was in. Sasuke stared at Naruto as he reached too far ahead, hoping to land a punch on Kakashi, but their sensei simply stepped back and stuck out a leg and tripped the blonde. It annoyed him to see Naruto downplay his strength. It annoyed him how he managed to defeat Gaara. It annoyed him how that was expected of him and not the blonde. Why was he so weak? He scoffed at himself. So much for defeating Itachi. Join us. A voice suggested. He can give you power. You already know the strength the curse mark gives you. Sasuke grit his teeth. The sun sank lower, painting the skies of Konoha a deep purple and red. Some people returned back to their homes while some ventured out. Everyone went about their daily life, unaware of the decisions being made by a lone survivor. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you enjoyed this what if and want to see next part of it, comment down below and let me know. Also share this video with your friends. See you in the next video. Peace.